Hello and welcome to the latest InfoSecurity Magazine webinar. My name is Kevin Poirot. I'm a reporter at InfoSecurity Magazine, and I'm here with Thibault Williams, the Director of TMW Resilience. So for the next 30 minutes, Thibault will offer some practical tips on how you can effectively prepare for and recover from a cybersecurity breach. Thibault, can you introduce yourself and maybe explain briefly what TMW Resilience is and what you do?
Good afternoon, morning, sorry. Thank you very much, Kevin. My name is Thibault Williams. I'm the Director of TMW Resilience. I have worked in cybersecurity for a number of years now, far longer than I care to count. But my main interest is supporting organizations in how to avoid the recovery step of a cyber attack. Everybody thinks that they can defend themselves against every single attack. It's not possible. You are going to get attacked. The only thing you can do now is to prepare so that when you get to the recovery step, it is clear, planned, and easy to complete.
I want to encourage anyone watching to submit your questions about today's topic to Thibault using the Q&A. We'll do our best to answer all questions by the end of the session. And if we can't do so because we don't have enough time, Thibault and his team will get back to you after this session to answer the questions that you may have. Thibault, the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much. Are you?
Yeah, I'll just
waiting for the slide.
Introduce. Yes, there we go.
Oh, we're giving away the secrets. People will want to leave.
That's a sneak peek.
Thank you all very much for joining us. So, how to recover from a cyber attack? Now, I'm somebody who likes to get straight to the point, so let's give you the answer straight away. Exactly the same way you survive falling off a ship. You fall off a ship, you should already be wearing the life jacket. You put it on before you need it. If you're in the air, you jump out of a plane, how do you survive? You already packed the parachute and you packed it before you jumped. Cyber recovery works exactly the same way. Cyber recovery planning is built before an incident. You cannot do it during an incident. There's absolutely no time to think during an incident. So these are some findings from the latest CrowdStrike Global Threat Report. 29 minutes, the average e-crime breakout. That's a very, very short amount of time. If you're trying to design and deliver your entire recovery and even your response and all the rest with that, you can't do it. 27 seconds, the fastest breakout ever recorded. 4 minutes until data exfiltration begins. Now that's all sitting on the response side and the incident response side. But again, if you have not got any recovery plans, if that's how quick things are going in the actual incident, if you don't have anything prepared, you are going to struggle in your recovery. And you're going to struggle to recover your business or your organization to a point where you can continue to deliver. And the NCSC made it very clear in their annual review that it's the organizations with a well thought out plans for continuity and recovery that are already in place, that are placed well to respond to attacks. And that is the key. And that is the focus of everything we're going to say today. So, what exactly does being prepared for it actually mean? It means you'll be able to answer these 6 questions. What are you trying to protect? What happens if you lose it? How long can your business survive without your critical systems? In my experience, this is a question that most organizations don't ask. Out of all the 6, it's the number 2 that's the one people don't really understand. Which systems must come back first? And that's a very, very critical question. Sometimes in recovery, you do have the opportunity to rebuild everything. A lot of the times you don't. And so which ones go first? That's another decision that you should have planned long before the incident takes place. What external factors will limit my recovery? So these days, with lots and lots and lots of integrations into multiple different systems, especially if you're using AI tools or third-party SaaS products or things like that, sometimes part of your recovery has to involve that third party. What limits are there? Some parties might say to you, we're not going to allow you to reconnect until you guarantee that your incident has ceased and you have treated everything. Well, that's a good thing to know before the incident. What does good enough look like? Like good enough for now. What does it look like for day 1, day 3, day 7? They are not the same thing. And do you have documented and tested plans that your team can execute under pressure? So let's work through these a little bit. First of all, what are you trying to protect and what happens if you lose it? What this actually means for all of you. Name the problem in business terms, not IT terms. Please, if there's one thing you all take away from today, this cyber outage recovery planning is not an IT issue. It is an organizational issue. IT absolutely, or your technical or your product security, whichever term you use, must be involved in the conversation because they are part of it, but it is an organization-wide problem. So you must do it in business terms. Quantify the financial impact of day one, week one, month one of downtime. That is a very, very critical thing to do because once you understand that, you will start understanding the impetus you need to put in. Identify your regulatory and legal exposure and name who owns the recovery decision at board level. I have been in incidences, I've been in the middle of recoveries where there are too many people fighting and arguing about who actually gets to take a decision, that they never take the decision. You need to decide that up front. Without any of this, there are real costs. So there are some very, very large ones out there. I've picked these two. These aren't the largest, but the M&S one, which a lot of us have heard about, so far the M&S one has cost £300 million in costs. It cost empty shelves, weeks of disruption, huge hit to them. And part of their issue was they did not have structured recovery plans. Looking at question 2, how long can your business survive without its critical systems? If you in your organization, if you are at any level of a middle or senior level of management and you've not heard the terms MTD, RTO, RPO, or maximum tolerable downtime, recovery time objective, recovery point objective, you need to go away and start researching these. These are the 3 most critical terms with regards to recovery. The MTD, what is the agreed maximum tolerable downtime? How long before the business fails? And this is a critical question, because if the answer is, well, if our systems are down for more than 2 hours, there's no point recovering, well, that's good to know, because then you may as well not bother trying to recover, because there are very, very few cyber outages that will be only 2 hours long. But equally, if you know, right, we've got 72 hours, then we need to plan for that. Your recovery time objective, how quickly must the system be restored? Recovery point objective, how much data loss can you tolerate? Now, some organizations could say we can tolerate 2 weeks of data loss. Great, that's fine, that's wonderful. But often people would say to me, well, more than an hour's loss of data, it's going to start having an impact. And you need to be able to quantify these. And if your board is not setting these numbers for you, your board, your senior leadership, your SLT, whatever terms you want to use, if they are not setting these, then somebody else is. And that means an employee is going to be making a judgment call under pressure, or some other shadow process is going to be doing it that nobody controls. And when the incident hits, you're on the back foot. And that's a real problem for you. Looking at the next one, which systems must come back first and which can wait? You need to understand your systems that are critical, high, and then the rest, medium, low, and those are the ones can wait. My favorite question was somebody says to me, well, how do I determine that? Or if somebody tries to determine it and use an emotive view set, or somebody tries to determine that, but they can't quite get there. There is the most simplest tool out there, and it's called FIPS 199. It's from the National Institute of Measures in the US, NIST. FIPS 199 is free, it's public, anybody can go look it up now, and it gives you an exact framework for how to go through every single system one at a time and how to categorize them against lots of different criteria. And from that, it will give you a quantitative way of deciding what is critical, what is high, what is not. And once you've mapped that, you start getting yourself into a much better position, because then when your incident takes place, if you're trying to recover, hang on a second, this system here, it's critical, that one's got to go first. What external factors will limit how fast you can recover? Again, I mentioned it earlier, third party and suppliers. Okay, your cloud providers or key suppliers to your platforms, everybody needs to be checking their contracts. All of your contracts should have a service level agreement in it, and it should certainly have a service level agreement for the event of a cyber outage. And if it does not, you need to go and renegotiate that. If it does, you need to understand. I have had a client before call me up and say, I need to restore my firewalls. I said, okay, what do you need from us? My supplier says they're not going to do it. We got involved. It turned out the supplier said, we've got an SLA of 10 days to restore your firewalls. Well, now that's not good enough for the client because they need it today, but that supplier can take 10 days. These are checks that we should be doing. Testing and clearance. Go and do the testing. You can't bring the systems back online without evidence. Once you do your recovery, you put your system back online, it takes time to test it. If you don't test it, you potentially restore your organization and it just collapses straight away. Well, your regulatory obligations, again, the legal ones. In the UK, the ICO notification, 72 hours. Depending on where you are in the world, FCA, NIS2, sector regulators, your insurance policy will have conditions. These all need to be understood before the incident takes place. And lastly, the identity and infrastructure build. 82% of intrusions are malware free. That's a very interesting stat, okay? 82% of intrusions are malware free, which means attackers use your own identity system. And so rebuilding them is often the hardest constraint because you might rebuild them and recreate that same vulnerability that was exploited. So that one is a very misunderstood piece in terms of recovery, and it's something that will slow you down. And you need to understand all these things before the incident. The fifth question, what does good enough look like? And this is a very challenging thing for an organization to understand. And again, depending on where you are in the organization, you might not like to hear this one, but for some organizations, day one is life support, and it might not include things like your HR system, your payroll. An organization's ability to pay its staff potentially is not the most critical system. Now, your staff will probably disagree with that because they like to get their salaries, which is of course important. But in terms of an organizational recovery, you need to understand what does life support look like, what does stabilized look like, and what does functional look like. Defining all this before an incident stops executive panic. And by executive panic, I think we can all be clear in many, many cases in these sorts of recoveries, executives like to run in, scream fire, and there's a team trying to resolve this, and they start to get involved. If you have this all defined, have this all agreed beforehand, it helps with that panic. It also stops driving the bad technical decisions at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're in the middle of recovery. So lastly, the last question is, do you have a plan that your team can execute under pressure? If your organization does not have any playbooks, any planning, or has any sort of understanding of what their recovery activity will look like, that is a very, very real risk and needs to be addressed urgently. Everyone should have a playbook. It should be written for the person executing at 2 a.m., not the consultant who built it. Please do take that one home with you. When you write playbooks, you need to position yourself in a position whereby you know nothing. Your playbook should always be written from a point that any other person could pick it up and read it and understand it. Too often I've seen playbooks that are written by technical people, for technical people, and in technical language. And then you get to recovery and it's not a technical person reading it and they have no clue what's going on. Every step of a playbook needs a named owner. The slight caveat I'd put on that is in any documentation, you should always try and use roles rather than individuals, right? Because your individuals may change, but roles generally do not. And ensure that no orphan tasks exist. All playbooks need to be accessible offline. We all live in the digital world. We all like to have things in the cloud. We all like to have things on our screens. In the event of a global outage, it's very unlikely that you'll have access to your systems or all of your systems, and therefore you sometimes do need to make sure that you have got a piece of paper accessible offline somewhere else so that you can you can use it. And this needs to be tested at least annually. Okay, depending on how much your organization changes. If your organization changes, has org structure restructures every 3 months, I'd suggest possibly testing a bit more than annually. But annually is a very good threshold for you. And honestly, your playbook needs to be built on the questions we've already gone through, questions 1 to 5. Most organizations that I work with, what they have is a generic IT disaster recovery. And I bring that up on purpose. IT disaster recovery is not the same as a cyber outage recovery plan. IT disaster recovery is pretty much how to put the lights back on. The recovery playbooks we're talking about here is how your organization starts to use the lights and electricity to bring your business back up. They're often never tested, or they're tested once and then forgotten about. It needs to be part of your annual reviews. It needs to be something that you do regularly. It's also stored on the network that potentially, in the event of a ransomware, just got encrypted. So let's make sure we keep paper copies. Bearing in mind all of that, I'd like to get a poll going for everybody. Just want to see those 6 questions. Of those 6 questions I've just asked, how many of those do you think you could answer today? Honestly, none is A. And that's not an unreasonable position. A lot of people haven't done that. 1 or 2 of them, you've started to think about it, nothing's documented. 3 or 4, we have basics, but you're not confident about it. All 6 are tested. That's absolutely fantastic. And in case you need them, these are the 6 questions again. Oh, there's definitely some people out with 3 or 4. That's excellent. Very, very well done on those. A couple of people with none. And believe me, I appreciate it's not nice to hear, and people may think otherwise, but it's not uncommon. Okay, we're going to leave a poll up for a little bit whilst we just continue. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour through all the 6 questions and what I believe you need to do to prepare and how you can avoid, how to recover from a cyber attack. The most common gap we find is that most organizations can't answer question 1. What actually happens to this organization if we go dark? So it's not because you haven't thought through security or because, frankly, you don't want to or anything like that. It's honestly a question people avoid. People don't want to ask the question. It's scary. It's quite something to be thinking about, if this all breaks, what are we actually going to do? But it's a free conversation you can have. It takes about 90 minutes. I would honestly schedule about 90 minutes in your next board meeting, in your next SRT, away day, anything like that. I would schedule 90 minutes for it. If you have to, schedule an hour, not less than that. And ask the question, what would happen if we go dark? And if people need some scenarios or need some way to help them think, you can go extreme. What would happen if our data centers, the power to our data centers went off for 24 hours? What would be the impact to us? Because that's effectively what a cyber incident is. What would happen if we couldn't log in remotely? What would happen if we couldn't trust that our login credentials are correct? What would happen if we discovered that data that we hold has been manipulated when we didn't know that was happening or we didn't want it to be? Those are real scenarios. They happen every single day. Go and have that conversation. So if you'd like to, here's some 4 steps for you for this week, which everybody can do, and this will easily bump you up the maturity index. Convene that meeting. Have that 90-minute discussion. So some people like to do slides. One thing I have used before, which is very useful, Post-it notes. Give everybody a set of Post-it notes and say to them, what do you think would happen if it went wrong? Write down an answer, stick it on a board, and then start collating them. Go and classify your systems, okay? FIPS 199, it is free. Anybody can Google it. It is there. It is a global industry standard. It is fantastic. It can be long. It can take time. It's worth it. And if you don't want to do all the ones in your organization, pick the ones that you think are your critical ones. Often it's very easy for you to guess, but start with your top 10. Once those are done and you've understood, do your next 10 and your next until they're all done. Set your MTD, RTO, RPO for critical systems, okay, and the organization overall. As part of your FIPS 199, part of the questions in there will be your MTD, RTO, RPO. So 2 and 3 go hand in hand. And lastly, name an executive owner. If nobody owns cyber recovery at the board level, nobody will fix it. Name that person this week. As I said right at the beginning, the life jacket is already available. Okay, all those questions you've had there, they are all available for you right now. There is nothing that will cost you money in those. Everything there can be done. You've got the life jacket, it is available. You need to put it on before you need it. TMW Resilience is here to support. You can get in touch using that QR code there if you need us. We're always very happy to have a conversation, happy to help people out where we can. And if anybody needs any assistance, please do reach out. I hope you found that useful. From the poll, just to let you know, around 7 to 10% of people saying, honestly, you've not started any cyber recovery. Don't worry, that's not uncommon. Very, very common. 1 to 2 have only just started a little bit. 29% of you only just started a little bit. 43% have the basics, but you're not confident you can execute it. We do, very thankfully, and I'm very pleased to see, have a couple of people, about 20%, who feel you have tested current plans and your board is across it. That is fantastic. That is very, very good. Well done to those people. I believe we've got a few Q&A. Is that right?
Yes, and I have a few questions myself, actually, but I just wanted to let people know that I've added a link to FIPS 199 from NIST. So if people want to know more about it, it's in the handout section. If we look at the results we got from the polls, the poll question, do you think it represents the reality? Do you think, and do you think the level of readiness of companies is linked to their size, to their industry? What do you see out there? Like, how ready do you see companies are?
I'd say that's a 2 or 3 part question. I'll try and make it short, don't worry. Certainly within the UK government has published a lot of reports recently. The NCSC as well, in their annual report, has made it very clear that the overwhelming majority of organizations are not ready. They are not ready for a cyber incident. When the number of times the NCSC gets involved and the people have no idea what's going on, the organization no planning, no preparation is very, very high. This is why the UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill is going through Parliament. It's due to come into effect in September. And as part of that, they are changing legislation to enforce that readiness. Right now, if an organization wants to get ready for cybersecurity in general, they should be looking at Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. It is not the world-beating standard, but it's a very good baseline standard. And that will include pieces like recovery, and that should definitely be there. What I'm certainly seeing in the market, and certainly when I'm working with organizations, in terms of the poll we've had there, I'd say today's a little bit skewed to the we're more ready than I would have expected. That's not necessarily saying you guys are lying or anything like that. It just means in this cohort it looks a bit small, but certainly nationally, then there are very, very few companies that are properly ready for a cyber outage.
Mm-hmm. So I do have a few questions myself, but I think I want to prioritize the questions from the audience. We have a first question that says, how much should executive leaders in an organization and the board be involved during an incident for a fast and well-governed recovery?
So this really depends on your organization itself, but broadly speaking, your absolute board and senior level should have a level of involvement that is equivalent to their risk. What I mean by that is, in the middle of an outage, you will have a whole load of technical teams and operational teams running around trying to fix all their little individual parts. They need somewhere to come up where they can ask for authorization to proceed, ask for decisions to be made. Okay, system X can come up with system Y can't. Which one, what would you like us to do? You need that strategic level. But if you have too many people in that strategic decision-making body, you get argument and disagreement, and that causes problems. Again, if all this is prepared beforehand, you should have one, maybe two people at that strategic level. Again, depending on the size of your organization, you scale it. And those people can take those strategic decisions, but they must have a direct link to your board, your senior leadership, your execs, whatever it might be, whereby they can communicate progress updates and take a view. But you really do not want your board level people being involved at the tactical delivery.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean that it's not necessarily the CISO that's kind of owning this recovery plan or resilience plan?
Potentially, and if we take a generically well-structured organization, the CISO should be involved in all of the response, the incident response point. And the CISO will get to a point where they declare the incident has been contained, you may commence recovery. At that point, my recommendation is that the CISO has involvement because there's still technical things going on, but they shouldn't be the lead for recovery, because the recovery lead should be a business lead, not a technical lead.
Okay. We have a second question, a second person asking, most of our systems are cloud hosted. Does this framework still apply, or is recovery fundamentally different in cloud environments?
So let's dispel one myth. Cloud is a really, really fancy marketing term for somebody else's infrastructure. So this framework absolutely applies. Anything in the cloud makes the planning part more important, not less. That shared responsibility model means that your cloud provider will recover their infrastructure, but your data, your configurations, your access controls, those are yours to recover. And one thing that often trips people up is the reconnection and the third-party validation piece, which sits in step 4 of our flow. Cloud providers have their own reconnection criteria and security testing gates before they'll let you back in. You can't accelerate that. So you need to know those constraints in advance, and then you need to add their days into your timeline if you haven't planned for them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And finally, we have one last question asking, when you talk about minimum viable product states, who actually makes the call on what's good enough to resume operations?
That's a good question. So this is one of the most important questions you can ask, because most plans don't have a clear answer to that. The framework that I've put there, it's explicit about this. The minimum viable product state is a business-defined state, so not IT-defined. And at the risk of potentially creating silos, that is very, very critical. We don't want it to be IT-defined, not because we don't like our IT people, but because IT is there to create the system, not the operation. It's an EXCO decision, an SLT decision. Step 2 of that flow, the impact tolerances and so on and so forth, is about establishing those thresholds before an incident so that you're not making that call under pressure at 2 a.m. If IT is making the good enough to go live decision in the middle of recovery, then something's gone wrong in that planning. And so the business needs to have a pre-agreed what degraded service looks like and what compensating controls are acceptable.
Thank you. I think that's pretty much all the time we've got for this session today. I hope our audience has a lot to consider now and a lot to think about. But if you wanted them to take something home, what would it be? Just one thing to close our session.
Just one thing: don't bury your head in the sand. Cyber attacks, cyber outage, it is real. It happens every single day, every single hour, every single minute. Do not think that it's not going to happen to you. Plan for it now.
Great. That wraps up this session. Thank you so much, Thibault, and thank you everyone for joining us.